He's Seth Davis from Sports Illustrated, CBS, college basketball analyst. And I figured that it's time to start talking college basketball because I don't know if we've really had a great storyline in college basketball this year. Kentucky's dominance. Indiana has been fun. Some of the surprise teams. The Big Ten has been dominant. But I wanted to bring in Seth Davis so he can help us as we get ready for March Madness. Where would you start if you were going with the storylines of college basketball this season?
Well, I think he kind of hit on it with Kentucky. I think Kentucky and Syracuse are the two that everybody, I'm sure, would agree have kind of distanced themselves from the field. Kentucky is a very intriguing story. We've got a freshman-dominated team. We have a player in Anthony Davis who is about to kind of hit for the cycle, Dan. I think he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year, National Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, and he may end up being Most Valuable Player at the Final Four, and not so coincidentally the number one pick in the NBA draft. That's a pretty good year. How's your year compared to that, by the way? Not as good, I'm guessing. And then, Syracuse starting the season with the whole Bernie Fine situation, sitting here at 27-1. They've had a lot of several close games down the stretch. They don't have that same kind of star power vis-a-vis NBA draft picks. And then you got your Murray State floating in there, your Wichita States. I think it's been sort of a typical season in college basketball, which I consider to be a compliment because I just think it's a very exciting time of year, but obviously I'm biased.
But you always have a team that there seems to be a flaw, that they if they run up against this type of team, this could create problems. If you look at Kentucky right now and Syracuse, what kind of team is going to give them trouble?
The other one. I think first of all in terms of how good they are, but also stylistically, the issue with Syracuse has been it's kind of been twofold. Number one, Dan, like I said, they don't have that clear. Like if you look at all these draft boards, they've only got one player right now projected to go in the first round, and that's Deion Waiters, and he'd be in the late first round. And by the way, he's not even starting on the team. But the bigger issue is with that zone, they're giving up a lot of offensive rebounds to the other team. And if you look at Kentucky, North Carolina is the other team that comes to mind, and Michigan State. Teams that are really good at attacking the offensive glass could be a problem for them. From Kentucky's standpoint, they actually have a couple of possible deficiencies. Number one is obviously their youth, which is most importantly manifest at the point guard spot. Marcus Teague is a freshman point guard who's really been up and down. At this point in the season, they have zero depth. I mean, everybody talks about like Ohio State's lack of a bench, but Kentucky literally plays six guys, and at some point maybe that catches up with you with foul shooting. And then the biggest weakness, I think, just from an X's and O's standpoint, is not a very good three-point shooting team. And against a zone like Syracuse, it's hard enough to get off your three-point shots, but you can get some open looks in the mid-range if you can knock them down, and that's maybe Kentucky's weakness. So I think my bosses at CBS and Turner, $12 billion or however much they paid for the tournament, I think they'd sign up for a Kentucky-Syracuse championship game, and we'll throw up the ball and see what happens.
Your four number one seeds, Kentucky, Syracuse, who are the other two?
You know what? We've got a jumble in there. It's actually quite interesting on a couple levels. First of all, my answer is I have Michigan State as my third team, and then I have Duke with the slight edge over Kansas for the fourth one. Really, to me, what tips the balance is the fact that Duke beat them head-to-head. Now, Duke also beat Michigan State head-to-head, but unlike those other teams, Michigan State doesn't have any losses at home. Even though Kansas lost in Kansas City to Davidson, that's a de facto home game in my view, but it's very, very close between Duke and Kansas, and North Carolina's right there, Missouri's right there. Now you have a couple of factors in here, Dan. What's really important? If you're Kansas or Missouri, what you want more than anything is to play in St. Louis, which is the site of the Midwest Regional. So would you rather be a number one in the West? Because right now, if you've got Michigan State ahead of them on the board, Michigan State would obviously rather be in the Midwest than the West. So if Michigan State wins the Big Ten regular season and the Big Ten tournament, they would probably be ahead. So maybe Kansas would end up being ahead of Missouri, but as a result, Kansas would be one in the West, and Missouri would be number two in the Midwest and get to play in St. Louis. And the other issue is wherever you are, you don't want to be with Kentucky or Syracuse. So between Duke and North Carolina, if you're the top two seed on the board, and I think most people don't realize the committee actually seeds the entire field 1 through 68, and for the first time they're going to reveal that list. But if you're Duke or North Carolina, being ahead of the other one on the 2 line is significant because now you can be the number 2 seed in the West as opposed to being a 2 seed in the East or the South where you have to go with Syracuse or Kentucky. So that's what these teams and these coaches are really thinking about right now.
Bigger disappointment, Ohio State or North Carolina?
I don't honestly know that I would classify either as a disappointment. I think based on how they've played lately, I would say Ohio State. They've lost 3 of their last 5, but 2 of them have been at home.
Yeah, but North Carolina brought back all of this talent, and when the season started, everybody thought, okay, it's North Carolina, right?
Yeah, they're ranked 7th. They've lost 4 games. I don't know. Sometimes we say a team's a disappointment because they prove us wrong. If North Carolina doesn't lose, obviously you give credit to Duke for winning and criticize Carolina for losing, but that was a little bit fluky, with Duke beating them. Otherwise, they've got probably a 12-game win streak, aside the bad loss at Florida State. So they've had a good year. Have they been the consensus overall number 1 team? I would say no, but I think moving forward, I think Ohio State's got bigger problems right now than North Carolina. The trend lines on Ohio State, they're not making outside shots, Dan. And as good as Jared Sullinger is, he can't do it all himself. He's limited. He's not very big. Michigan State gave him problems because they have a lot of big guys inside who they're not as talented as he is maybe, but they can just be physical with him and bother him and not have to double team him in the post. So Ohio State, for them to lose at home against Wisconsin, no disrespect to Wisconsin, but that's not a real good basketball team. And on your own home court on senior day, to not win that game shows me that there's something significantly wrong with that team.
Good to visit with you. We'll be checking in with you. Thank you, Seth.
Dan, great talking to you, pal. Thanks for having me on.
Seth Davis, CBS Sports. He'll be there in the studio. Road to the Final Four. Also writes for Sports Illustrated. College basketball, we love March Madness. Regular season, I couldn't care less about it. I do like to watch just to see who's good, some of the surprises, who's going to be one and done. But you're getting to know these kids for about 3 months, 2 months, maybe 1 month during the tournament. It's really, college basketball is about the coaches. Didn't used to be that way. The coaches kind of complimented star players and vice versa because you ran their system. Now it's just about, Tom Izzo, John Calipari, Rick Pitino, Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski. Those are the names of college basketball. But that's what one and done has done to us. Imagine if you got these guys coming back, and let's say they stayed 2 years. It would be a remarkable difference in the game because you'd actually go, I wonder what he's going to be like or that team's going to be like next year. Now it's, Kentucky, say goodbye. They're going to, how many guys are done? Now, I know that's the landscape there, and Calipari, that's who he's recruiting. It's bad for the game because you invest in a school, in a coach, not in the players.